Hey everyone, today I am doing a response video to Jambre's video called These Deck Cards Are a Problem. 3 cards holding back the Hearthstone meta. He talks about these 3 cards. He talks about Anub, this card right here, which is a battle card, gain armor. Your next 3 minions this turn cost armor instead of mana. He talks about Lady Stheno. Immune while attacking after you cast a spell, attack the lowest health enemy. And he talks about the rogue location, Sinstone Graveyard, which is summon a 1/1 ghost, has +1/+1 for each other card you played this turn. And I'm going to make the argument that these cards are all fine and great, like a true contrarian. But I truly believe that these cards are really well designed in their current state, and some of them were poorly designed, at least in the previous state with the previous interactions. But I think they are really interesting cards, and I don't want them to go away. So at the beginning, sort of my overall point is one of the things I believe is people are going to seek out strong decks. So you're going to lose to stuff 50% of the time. Your opponents are going to be looking for the things that are efficient, the things that are powerful, the things that are going to kill you. So the problem is when you nerf something that's powerful, people just go to the other powerful thing. But what that often turns into, because people think, oh, now Menagerie Warrior is finally going to shine. But it really just often means that the pool of powerful things becomes less and smaller, becomes less interesting things to play, and it becomes less powerful things to play. That are less, more boring things to play, like stats on curve. So my bottom line is you're going to play decks that piss you off because they come kill you. And I like when decks have fun and interesting mechanics. I think all these cards are interesting mechanics. They're all unique. They're all, I think, add an interesting element to the game. I'm going to say pure stats on curve. This is what I call the Highlander Hunter effect. It was one of my least favorite decks of all time when it was dominant, where you just, though I think pure stats on curve are great for beginners. Playing something like, a Beast Hunter where you play Baddie Guest on 1, and then you go Doggy Biscuit, and then you go, whatever, Animal Companion. This is, I think, really great for beginners, but the more you play the game, I think when we kind of often nerf things to the ground, eventually a pure stats, boring, less power spiky deck becomes the dominant deck. This has happened many times, and I think that's boring. I think we don't want to nerf the cards that are interesting mechanics. And I think there's also this point of view that the cards from the new expansion should be the dominant ones. And I think the reality is, in a perfect world where you can design an expansion that has tons of interesting mechanics and that is a big hit every time, that would be great. But not all expansions are created equally. So I would rather have cards that are interesting from previous expansions, shining in new ways, which I think these cards are. Look at the interaction with Zook with Anub compared to the last one, which was with Brandon Astoler. But I would rather cards be interesting in new ways than interesting in than just making cards that aren't interesting designed so powerful that they are relevant. I think it's okay for certain expansions to have a lot of duds as long as you keep the interesting cards from previous expansions relevant. And there's a huge pressure that if you just nerf all the previous cards to the ground so the new expansion can be relevant, what you often get is you get really, really boring expansions occasionally, and then you're stuck playing really boring cards instead of just being able to play, well, I'm going to play the few interesting cards from the expansion, and I'm going to play the old interesting cards, and maybe I have a few interesting new interactions, but things aren't that different. I think that's okay. And that's kind of what I think this expansion is. I don't think this expansion is a huge hit, but I think there are some really interesting things in this expansion, and especially in combination with the old expansion, I think I'm actually having a ton of fun in this expansion. But I think if you just delete the old cards with massive nerfs, you're going to get a boring game. One of the things I want to talk about is why I think these cards are good cards, why I think they're interesting, and why I think they're good design. And I think one of the things that when I think cards are powerful, I think it's important for them to have counterplay. And what I mean by this is is there a way to stop this? And let's talk about why I think Anub in its old iteration in the last meta was a problem card and why it's not now. So old Anub, because of his interaction with Brand and Astalor, you could go Brand, Innervate Anub, or you could just go Guff to go to 11 mana. You could do this combo, and then you go Brand, you play your Astalor for 2 mana. So you would get a 5 mana Astalor, and then you would go Brand Anub, 5 mana Astalor and double 8 mana Astalor, and you would do 56 damage. It got nerfed multiple times. It was originally this, and it's so reliable, and it killed you without you being able to interact with it. I think this is so much different than Zook. Zook is you make a giant board of taunts, and you make a giant this, but your opponent can clear all your other minions. They can do a board clear. They can. I have a clip here of an unholy deck that I thought I was crushing. I put 230 health taunts in the way, and they had infused their Sylvanas, and they stole one of my Sylvanas, traded the other one, and then they proceeded to win the game very easily. So what I like about the Zook plays is, and I think even the Jailer combos, often if you do win with Jailer against Blood, that takes more time, it takes more armor, it's harder to get that pop off. Players are often, sometimes if they want to get one of these Jailer combos, they're running Chidness Plating to sort of get that 4 armor to get more mana. But I think bottom line is this Anub in its current interaction with board, with stats on board, there are lots of counterplay. You can clear the board. You can, if your spell DH, you're really broken, you could do Sinful Brands on the thing. There's lots of, you could just go a board clear. Blood Death Knight just goes the 8-drop or Corpse Explosion. And often you're in this situation where you can do a play that you win all the time when they don't have ETC, for example, into the 2-drop, which is, what is it called? Crazed Alchemist. So a lot of times it's a thing of, well, you have a way, if they don't have it, you win. So there's a lot more going on, I think, with this deck against control decks, against tempo decks. And tempo decks also have the ability not only to pressure you down, but to force out a suboptimal. Maybe you haven't hit the Zook combo. Maybe you only can get one minion out of your Zook, for example. You can only go Noob Zook because you're going to die. So a lot of these things, there is the ability to pressure the combo deck to force out a suboptimal Anub'arak. So my bottom line is Anub is an interesting card. It's a fun card. It allows Druid to exist. It's a fun power spike to play, and there's tons of counterplay, despite what people say. You can beat the giant stats on board if you have enough going for you. But a lot of times you're not, and that's why it's a competitive deck, but it's not a broken deck. It tends to be best at top 20 Legend as a counter to a lot of the Demon Hunter decks. But the reality is, at the rest of the ladder, it's not doing particularly well. It's doing okay, but it's not the dominant force that the players will have you say. So I think just because a deck is exploiting a certain current meta trend, because there's not enough aggro at high ranks to punish this deck, I think this card's really cool overall. And I just the Anub decks, and I think the gameplay is really fun, and I think there's lots of counterplay on board. So that's why I think Anub should not be nerfed. Let's talk about Rogue. So Rogue, and I'm going to talk about why in its old interactions was so toxic. Rogue not only used to be 2 mana, but it used to have a stealth. So what did that mean? If you were a deck, it was very difficult for you to counterplay. So decks like Priest that ran Shadowed Ruin that could kill stealth minions could deal with it. But if you're a class that just ran single target removal, or even you're a tempo class, they could just make these giant minions, and if you couldn't kill them fast enough, you were out of luck. But now you can do, let's say they get off late, you can do a Sylvanas and steal it. You can there are things you can do to have counterplay. Now it's still strong, and sometimes with tempo, you don't have time to have counterplay. But the reality is, this card can be just easily, you know, you put a 10/10 for 3 mana. That seems pretty unfair until I'm priest and I go 1 mana light that burns and I kill this card. There's lots and lots of counterplay to this deck, and I'm going to show you the current matchup spread and why. At the end of the day, I think what I really hated about this card when there was, I think it was a time where I believe it was 3 mana, they weren't stealth, and Wild Paul Knoll was a thing. No, I think they might have had, the interaction might not have been quite like that, but you had Wild Paul Knoll, which made it so it was so hard for aggro decks to kill it. So you can see Miracle Rogue has a pretty balanced matchup spread. This is at Legend in general. You can make a case for top 1,000, but you can't see a lot of the decks because they don't see enough play. But if you look at sort of the good decks, one, it's a very slight favorite against Outcast Demon Hunter, but that's a 50% win rate mostly. So nothing egregious there. It is unfavored against Unholy and very unfavored against Frost. I think with Frost, because of the Frostborn Furies are really, really good against this deck. And even things like the 4 mana weapon, just kind of, you just freeze all the big stuff and go face. But what I do like is seeing that Unholy, it's a slight unfavored. I like seeing that just a regular tempo aggro deck can get under the deck, because I think the trade-off, and this is what I talked about in my article, where when Rogue was really broken, it didn't have trade-offs because of Wild Paul Knoll. My trade-off is, something that you give up to get you your powerful, strong thing. Druid often has really, really clear trade-offs of Druid is very vulnerable to aggro, doesn't have good board clears, then it has ways to really, really cheat out tons of stats, which I think the current Druid deck is a complete alignment with Druid's class identity. But I think if Rogue's idea is, well, if they're setting up these big miracle turns, it needs to be vulnerable to Curvestone. And Curvestone sort of Unholy, I think the fact that it is slight unfavored, even though it's not a big unfavored, is a good sign that this is working as intended. I think during the Wild Paul Knoll days, this was not the case. And you can see certain other aggro decks, it's not doing as well. It's favored against things like Face Hunter, things like Totem Shaman. But even this, Totem Shaman is not a big favorite, and Face Hunter is sort of a weaker deck overall. So it's not unreasonable, in my opinion, that it wouldn't be. It's going to have some decks, aggro decks that it's favored against, and some aggro decks that it's unfavored against. But the fact that it has about a 50% win rate spread against a lot of the tempo decks is a sign that I don't think it's a fundamentally broken deck, and its overall win rate at Legend is 52%, and it actually goes down at High Legend, probably because of Spell Demon Hunter being very dominant over there. So my bottom line is, I think current Miracle Rogue, because it doesn't have the 1 mana weapon, it doesn't have the Mailbox Dancer, its power spikes are a lot easier to deal with, and its tempo decks can compete with it, and control decks can absolutely annihilate this deck if they're teched in the right way. So Spell Demon Hunter and Control Priest, Thief Priest, absolutely annihilate. Oh, here's another aggro deck going under it, Undead Priest. So a lot of the aggro decks are beating it. The control decks are absolutely annihilating it, and it's beating some of the weaker aggro decks. So this deck, I think, in its current form, is not a problem. And people like, as much as I get annoyed by concoctions, people like playing their 30 cards in one turn. It's fun. It's not fun for me. I prefer a more balanced, sort of relaxed gameplay, but people like that style. So I think getting rid of this deck is for some bunch of, for example, the other rogue deck that you sometimes see on ladder is the... let's see, it's barely is Pirate Rogue. So this deck, that runs the Jolly Roger, I think is a much more boring deck. And let's say all of a sudden they made this deck. Now I think the Hotusk stuff is fun, but most of the popular builds don't even run Hotusk. It's just kind of playing these stats on curve, getting this Jolly Roger down, tempoing out. This is a deck that, in my opinion, is less interesting and less fun. I don't want this to be the dominant rogue deck because it's not as fun or as interesting. I think Miracle Rogue is a much more fun, a much more interesting deck, and a better gameplay and a better designed deck. So once again, my whole point is something is going to be strong. I would rather the strong thing be fun and interesting as long as it has counterplay. Miracle Rogue can get beat by tempo decks. It can get annihilated by any deck that runs single target removal, aka Control Priest. It can be, and in Spell Demon Hunter, while it doesn't have single target removal, Symbol Brands just annihilate this deck. So this deck overall, Miracle Rogue, I think is not a problem, and it's gotten to the point where it was, especially because of the stealth and the overall efficiency, was a problem, and it's a spot where it's at a good spot right now. It does not need to get nerfed. And the last card we're going to talk about, which I think is the current out of all the cards, is probably maybe the best case for being nerfed out of all of them, but I'm still skeptical, is Lady Sthenos here. Lady Sthenos immune while attacking. After you cast a spell, attack the lowest health enemy. And I'm going to say this card's fun. And this card has counterplay. What is the counterplay? Put minions on board and gain life. If you have a ton of minions on board. Now, I think one of the interactions that they nerfed was Lady Stheno with the unnerfed, where's the card? The unnerfed Rowdy Fan. Choose a minion. It has a +3 attack while this is alive. This card was 4 attack, and with Lady Stheno with this combo with 4 was a little too strong. They nerfed it to 3. It is a little more reasonable. But I think a lot of Lady Stheno's lists are actually cutting Rowdy Fan because it's not worth it. That card allows you in the current, if Blood Death Knight becomes ridiculously popular, it allows the Demon Hunter to tech and better win against the Blood Death Knight, but it's coming at the cost of other tempo matchups. So most Demon Hunter lists are not running Rowdy right now. But that being said, Lady Stheno has counterplay. It's very easy. Put minions on board, put lots of stats on board, and get ahead on tempo. The problem right now, I think, with the one problem, and this is the deck, and I just put out a video on this deck, is the Spell Demon Hunter build. So the Spell Demon Hunter has the Sinful Brand and the Feldari Warband, which can just do ridiculous damage if you play a minion. And I think this gameplay is the best case for a nerf. This deck is the best deck for a nerf because it punishes you play minions and it punishes you don't play minions. So I think having this both in one deck is very uninteractable. It does not have good counterplay and is the best case for getting nerfed. Now, I don't really want Lady Stheno to get nerfed. I think it's the wrong card. I'm not sure. Maybe Feldari Warband needs to get nerfed. Maybe Sinful Brand gets nerfed again. Maybe you make it Sinful Brand 1-mana again, maybe make it do 1 damage per hit, so it's way less powerful. I don't know the exact answer, but I think the reality is I think Lady Stheno is a really cool card, and it makes for lots of fun pop-off plays, and punishes you sort of for not fighting for board and getting ahead fast enough. But that being said, in combination with Sinful Brand, I think that can be pretty toxic. So I think that is the card, or at least the class, that I think has the biggest case for getting nerfed. But that being said, I'm not sure what the nerf is, and I don't necessarily think Lady Stheno is a fundamentally badly designed card just because she can do lots of face damage when you don't play a board. What I like about her is that she is good for a control deck that doesn't do anything, that just waits around. But the problem is then the Sinful Brand combo rewards you for just waiting around. So I think something here probably will eventually get nerfed. I think this is the best case nerf, but I think the noob doesn't need to get nerfed. I think Rogue needs to get nerfed, and I think this nerf, I'm not even sure if it's Lady Stheno. I think maybe something on Sinful Brand getting nerfed, maybe reducing the damage that the minions do with Sinful Brand is nerf. So mine is I don't think these cards are badly designed. I think they're fun, and I think they're a lot funner than a lot of the cards from the current expansion. I don't think you're going to get amazing cards every expansion in every class. I think, things like, for example, Skullman's Academy, which I think was one of the best designed sets of all time, where you had 9 amazing fun classes, is the exception, not the rule. So what I do like is when we do randomly, we get the card that's an amazing design, that's fun, that's interesting, that it sticks around and it doesn't just get deleted for the sake of novelty. So that's my general point of view. Hope you like this kind of content. So yeah, let me know. Do you think these cards should get nerfed? Do you think they're fine? What is the world that you're happy in Hearthstone? Is it just a thing of, because what I would challenge you is I think there's certain people who just think everything is too strong and everything that does anything powerful is bad. And like I said, the things I want for powerful cards is I want them to have fun and interesting mechanics, not just be pure support, do sort of power spike in a unique way that's unique, especially unique to the class, which I think all three of these cards do. And I think it's important for the powerful cards to have counterplay, which I think all three of these cards do. So anyways, hope you found this interesting.